Welcome to the Jerry Acuff Show. I'm Jerry, your host, and I started this podcast to bring to you people who are doing incredible things. I've always been fascinated by those who have found their greatness, and I'm excited to share the secrets of their success. Let's meet today's guest. Welcome to the next episode of the Jerry Acuff Show. I am really excited today to talk with Jeremy Veatch. Jeremy is a graduate of the University of Arizona, and then switched allegiances and became a graduate of Arizona State's MBA program, which I have right much experience with. I used to go over there once a year back when I lived in Phoenix and talk to kids who volunteered to want to learn how to build valuable business relationships. Jeremy has worked in healthcare when he did a fellowship at C.R. Bard, which is a very impressive company. Then he went to work for the Bank of America, where he had a little bit of everything in the 7 years he was there. He sort of did almost everything that you could do that had something to do with sales execution and data analysis. He is now the founding partner of Ironwood Ventures, which is a management consulting company specializing in accelerating growth for emerging and middle market businesses. And if that weren't enough, he also is involved with, he's the president of the board for Hustle PHX, which stands for Phoenix, helping inner city folks start and grow businesses, which I think is a wonderful venture. Also, apparently, there's a little bit of acting in his repertoire. He was the most improved actor, and I don't know if that means you were lousy before and then got great.
Exactly what it means.
At Canyon del Oro High School drama department. So welcome to the Jerry Acuff Show, Jeremy. And I'd love to sort of get a taste of your road to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I always say that I'm actually not an entrepreneur. And so that's always an interesting place to start, right? We work with entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurs, and we help them be the best version of themselves. But essentially, I'm not a creator. What I can do and where I can be helpful is I can take a spark and take a flame, and I can blow on it, and I can help you be the best version of yourself. And, one thing that I had in my background that you didn't mention, Jerry, was I was a pastor to junior high and high school students for 5.5 years. And I always tell our clients that I do the same thing today in management consulting that I did as a youth pastor. I just help folks be the best version of themselves. Talked a lot more about Jesus then, talk a little bit more about dollars and cents now, but ultimately it's the same activities. So a couple of things that kind of catapulted me into starting a management consulting firm with my partner and good friend Patrick Holcomb is, when we were both at corporate America, we saw that we had great opportunity, and we had really both built our careers and we're making more money than we ever thought we'd make. But we realized that we just weren't growing anymore. And so to feed that growth and to feed that desire to build, we started investing in small businesses around town. And we saw that the things that we had picked up in corporate America really accelerated growth, and it lit these businesses on fire in a good way. And so we took the leap. We said, hey, we can do this full time. And so we raised money, since we're no spring chickens. We have families and things that we had going. And so we raised money and, took our ownership in businesses that we had and put it all in the pot, and have some investors that helped us start Ironwood Venture, which is just at its core, it's a management consulting business. And so then we found ourselves in the world of entrepreneurs. But again, for us, it's less about building our business, and we win when the businesses that we work with grow. And so all the incentives are aligned so that our goal is to get the CEO's business to grow, and ultimately to make them a better husband, father, mother, brother, sister, by helping their business grow.
So what are some of the things that you found that are common among mistakes people make that run, small to mid-sized companies?
hmm Yeah, there's this. It's interesting. I don't even know if I'd call them mistakes, but some common themes that people do is people feel like taking on capital takes them to a new level. It's almost like a badge of ownership or a badge of pride, where they say, "Hey, I'm gonna take on capital. I'm gonna raise money," and that is a last resort in my mind. Not because you don't want partners, not because partners are bad things. We have investors. We raise money for companies. I have investors. I have partners. But you just have to realize that the game changes, and that raising capital should be kind of a last resort, as opposed to a place to start. So that's kind of one. The second one is that every CEO that we work with feels alone. It's lonely at the top, and they don't have somebody around them to help them make decisions. And there is a magic of having a mentor that you go to coffee with who knows you personally and can help guide your thinking. But that's a difference of the next morning when you wake up and you get out of bed and your employees call in sick. Who's going to help you address that tactical piece? And so that's every CEO needs that help of someone helping them through the tactics. So those are the two. Would be money, being alone, and the last one I would say is essentially cash flow. Every CEO that I talk to wants better cash flow, and I think that people define cash flow as different things, but ultimately what they're looking for is they're looking to have dollars that they can reinvest in the business to grow the business,
Right.
or that they can extract from the business. And so it's helping people be able to set up the business to do that.
What percentage if you had to guess, what percentage of the companies that you work with are good at sales and marketing?
Every single company that we work with, the CEO is great at sales because they've had to be. They built the business, they designed it, they're an expert in whatever they're in, right? And we sit across a bunch of industries. It's the transition. Here's why I love following you and I love your pieces. I love going on and getting your content. It's the transition of how do I build a sales organization? That piece, almost no one is.
Gotcha. Well, we do business with lots of companies, large and small, and we help them, build a sales organization and then a selling approach and a coaching approach, because it's a really complex thing to do. But it is funny. Maybe it's not funny, but I mean, it is interesting that what you said is so true. The CEO is almost always really good at it, but transferring that skill and scaling it so that everybody is as good as the CEO is a completely different issue. So what are some of the common challenges that your clients face, and do you have a standardized discovery process that you go through when you take on a client to sort of give you some idea of, for lack of a better term, the buckets that you ought to be looking in?
Mm-hmm. We do, and we've developed it over time, because we're fighting. I don't like the word consultant. My wife always reminds me that I am a consultant. I don't like that term. I think that a consultant gets a bad name because when you think of a consultant, you think of McKinsey or Boston, and they're coming in and they're delivering a 120-page PowerPoint deck, and now I just have a load of work I have to do, but no help executing. And so I think one thing that we are fighting in our business is when we talk to new clients is helping them wrap around the brain that we are not going to do that. That's not what we do. And so to combat that, we have very clearly defined our discovery and onboarding process. So we'll go on site for usually 2 to 3 meetings with the CEO, with the team, to see the actual operations as part of discovery. That's free. That's just us even seeing if we can help, right? But it's that once we have a contract in place, we always do what's called a strategic assessment, and that's 90 days where we are under the covers. We're in your staff meetings, we're in the PA, the performance assessment, we're in those meetings, we're in your financial reviews with your CPA, we're meeting with your sales team, and we're asking a lot of questions. And at the end of that, we give you a very concise report of this is what the business needs to grow. And always the CEO looks at us as like, yes, 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 I knew these things. Okay, that one surprised me. This one surprised me. And during that 90 days, what we've been able to do is we've been able to actually change some of those. So we have a client we're delivering the strategic assessment to next week. And already she hasn't been profitable for 4 years. Business has not been profitable for 4 years. This next quarter, they will be profitable because of some of the changes we've made in the first 3 months.
Right.
And so we always say, we're going to pay for ourselves in the first 5 months. But after you get that strategic assessment, if we get hit by a bus, you could take those things and have your team execute it. And so that kind of becomes the linchpin for what's the rest of the work that we're going to do for the coming year or 2 years. It'll all link back to that kind of standardized process.
So how often do they ask you to help them execute it?
Always, and we want to execute it. That's part of our, it's a failure for us if we don't get to execute it.
But isn't it true that the big consulting companies don't help you execute it?
And that's what we're combating. We are 100% different because, I'll give you an example that's a little abstract back from my youth pastor days. The reason I exist is because in 2003, one of our students that I was mentoring is a high school student. His mom, reading a ton of books about how to parent high school students, getting a bunch of help there. But she calls me one day and says, my son hasn't gone to school in 2 weeks. He's playing video games till 5 a.m. I don't know what to do. The Boston consultants of the world would have given advice, and they would have given her a book to read. But when I was a youth pastor, I walked over, I hung up the phone. We didn't have cell phones. I hung up the phone at church. I drove her to his house. I opened his bedroom door. I woke him up. I took his video game console, and I threw it in the trash. That was a very hard day for him, and it was a hard day for me. But he graduated high school. He graduated college. He's now an editor on Dancing with the Stars, right? So he's doing video editing. He's doing what he dreams of doing. But just like that with Dan, we have to, in our businesses, get in and get dirty and help the CEOs. And so that's what we have to help with the execution. The advice just doesn't cut it.
So when you deliver the strategic, what you call it, the strategic
assessment,
is that where you make recommendations about what
we
needs
do,
to be
yeah.
executed?
Yep. You got it. And so what usually ends up happening is we'll say, okay, here's what you need to do in the next 90 days. Here's what you need to do in the next 160 days, right? And then usually what happens is there's 2 pieces that we need to add on. There's a strategic planning component. We actually have had a couple of clients that are really good at this, and so they didn't need help there.
Right.
But always there's a financial planning component. Every single one of our clients are experts in their industry, but they can't get cash flow, right? When there's a lot of gravy and the sales are humming, they have tons of dollars. But how do you activate your net income and turn it into cash to reinvest? That's where we can be really helpful. And when you pair strategic planning with the financial piece, so I have an accounting background, so that's where I can be helpful. When you pair that strategic planning with the financial piece, then we're able to activate that. And the only way for us to activate it is to get in the weeds and get dirty.
So how do you help them if they're not any good at sales and marketing?
Honestly, Jerry, that is a very hard thing because the CEO is great at it. It's transitioning it over. And most folks, when they're trying to build a sales organization, they say, I'm going to hire a salesperson, and I want that salesperson to build out the sales organization, which is terrible. The new salesperson can't build out the sales organization for you, right? And so it's really a challenge. So what we've done is we've expanded our capabilities to try to be helpful. So what we've done is we've added a marketing automation piece. And so we are able to come in and drive through online traffic and through kind of digital communications. We're able to drive more customers to our clients, and we can help them with that. But ultimately, still building a sales organization. My business partner, Patrick, ran a 2,000-person sales team. So he is right now talking to one of our clients, and they are hiring a salesperson, and Patrick's building the onboarding plan. But you've made a living at this. It's hard work.
Well, what's interesting about your firm is it's very similar to mine, except our focus is sales and marketing.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so we have a discovery phase, just like you do. We develop sort of an insights document which tells them everything they need to do, and then our objective is for them to hire us to show them how to do it. Because
Yes.
McKinsey, and I've hired McKinsey before, and they're a wonderful firm, and they give you great advice, most of it which they got from you or somebody on your team, but they come up with some really good ideas, but they don't tell you how to implement them. And
And that's the hard thing. Yep.
I always said, and I've started this company 17 years ago, I want to be able to tell you how to do it. So we've worked on 160 brands in the pharmaceutical business, where these are either brands that are not doing well or getting competition that they think is going to destroy their business, or are launching and can't afford to fail. And we've had phenomenal success in helping clients go from an 18 share to a 52 share in 9 months.
It's awesome.
Because we understand that part of the process. And one of the things that I did for companies that don't have a training program, so they hire a sales director, they get them to develop the team, then you got to develop the training. So I created everything I know about selling, and that, supposedly one of the top 5 sales experts in the world. I think I'd be higher if my ex-wife didn't vote. And but I've just put into to an online platform everything I know about goal setting, relationship building, selling without being pushy and aggressive, and how do you coach selling in the field in real time, so that if somebody wants to have a tool that makes it easy to train their people, they can do it online, and they can find out whether people have actually done it or not. So you say this rep's not any good at questioning, you can assign them the questioning piece of my training. Now, we have 148 lessons in our training, and 95% of them are 5 minutes or less. And so it's quick learning.
That's key.
Yeah, it is. In today's generation, it's exactly the same. But the point I'm making is that if you can't stay with them and show them how to do it, then your value as a consultant is simply bringing them ideas that probably 80% of them they already knew, and 20% are new, but they don't know what to do with them.
And that's why consultants get such a bad rap, is because it's not that they're necessarily doing a bad job, but the expectations are not in line, right? I think people believe, right? CEOs believe they're going to get help executing, but they're just getting the ideas. To your point, we see this. We end up creating those opportunities for a growing sales organization because we get everything else tied in and ready to go. And then at the end of the day, when everything's humming and we've got cash coming to the table, guess where we want to reinvest it? Right. We want to reinvest it in a sales organization. So it's almost like we're creating a need for you. Gotcha. If that makes sense.
No, it does. And hopefully some of your clients will want to use our stuff. I always say that, my virtual training program ensures your people have no excuse for mediocrity, because I don't think you can ask people to be excellent until you show them what it looks like. But, one of the things that we do, and when we have to compete against other, clients, and, people will say to me, well, we're entertaining this other consulting company. And I always say, well, let me ask you this. Are you more interested in how they teach you to sell, or how they teach you to sell your product? Which of those two is most important?
Oh, interesting.
And they say, well, teach me how to sell my product. And I said, okay, is that other vendor going to teach you how to sell your product? Or are they going to simply teach you selling fundamentals? And when they say selling fundamentals, then we'll say, well, let me tell you something. That's what makes us different. We're going to teach you how to sell your product. And so we're not going to come in and we're going to give you insights. We're going to tell you what you need to do. We're going to tell you if you've got issues with your leadership team. We're going to tell you if you got communication issues, but we're going to show you how to sell your product. Right. And we are the only company in our industry that has the guts to do that. Now, we've done 160 of those projects in the 17 years I've been here, and we have only done poorly in one of them. And so,
but that's the difference. I mean, that's proven. Like, I feel like that like teaching you how to sell your product versus the fundamentals is one. Getting the fundamentals is great, but when you teach somebody how to sell their product, the fundamentals are going to come. It's why you sign your kids up for soccer with a soccer coach and you don't put them in front of the TV watching a YouTube person.
Right.
It's because you need that tactical hands-on, don't do this, do this.
But it also seems to me that if I were in your business, which I'm not, is the question I'd be asking, are you looking for an insight report that tells you everything you need to do, or do you want that plus the ability for somebody to help you execute it so that you can actually ensure success?
Right.
My guess is most of them will say, well, I want the second one, not the first one. Because lots of people give you the first one. I mean,
they give you the insights.
Yeah, they'll give you the, and they'll be good. I'm not saying it won't be good. The problem is I always tell people, and I use this a lot, and I say the margin for error in business today is very small and getting smaller. And so what fundamentally determines a company's success in business is execution excellence. And if you don't know what execution excellence is, then you can't teach it. And if you don't know what it is, you can't expect it. And so what we do is come in and show you what execution excellence looks like as it relates to selling your product.
Well, and you know it better than anybody in the sales world. It is down to the minutia, literally down to you need to be able to write a better subject line for an email. That's not YouTube advice. That's somebody actually telling you, here's why your subject lines are not engaging. Here is how to open an email, and here is how to end an email. I mean, it's a very, very fine conversation. Not broad,
I mean,
right?
our stuff is so detailed, it's unbelievable. I mean, we think that, there's 5 things that happen in a sales call. You got to open the call. You got to ask questions. You got to tell your story. You got to answer questions, objections. You got to ask for the business. What we do is we come in and tell you how to do all those, and we don't tell you one way. We give you 8, 9, 10 different ways to open the call. The reality is most people are boring, and you have to teach people, if you're going to get somebody's interest, you better be interesting.
Don't be boring. Exactly. Well, it's the same thing. It's funny to hear what you're saying from the sales perspective, because when we help folks on cash flow, it's the same thing. They say, well, how do I get cash flow? I say, cash flow is really easy. Sell stuff, charge people, collect the money. Are you doing those things? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, I'm doing all 3. Then why don't you have cash flow? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, let's get in the weeds. And then you get in the weeds and the details, and you see that their accounts receivable over 160 days.
Right.
And they say, well, that's just the timing of what people pay. And I say, well, not in my world.
Right.
So when they show up for the first meeting, give them the first invoice. And we've taken folks and quadrupled their net income, quintupled their cash flow, how much cash they have in the bank, just by making tweaks in how they manage the day-to-day. But again, it's back to just like when you say, hey, you're boring, you need to be engaging instead. It's the same thing on the cash flow side, right?
Yeah.
You have to follow through. You have to set expectations and follow through. And there's no easy answer.
Well, I think the other thing you got to do is you got to take a hard look at what you're spending, because my guess is, I told everybody that I've ever met, my guess is I could take 10% of my expenses out if I really wanted to. And so if I had a cash flow problem, first thing I'd look at is, where am I spending money, which is probably a waste of money.
And there's always those opportunities.
Yeah.
I am my general gestalt in life, though, is instead of squeezing more juice from a lemon, I'm going to figure out how to make that tree grow more lemons. And so that is, even though I'm an accountant, that's my mindset to every situation.
Yeah, mine is too, because you can't save your way to prosperity.
No, never.
Well,
never.
Listen, Jeremy, you have been a terrific guest. I'm going to try and summarize here some of the really salient points that you made, which you've just been terrific. First place, I want to congratulate you on your work with entrepreneurs, helping especially people in inner cities that are not doing well. I mean, I'm a big believer that we don't have enough of that going on. Most people need a mentor.
They do.
Your CEOs need a mentor. I'm a CEO of a company with 30 employees. I have 3 mentors, and without those mentors, I don't know how successful I would be. But some of the things that you said, which I thought were really powerful one was taking on capital is a badge of courage, but needs to be a last resort because it changes the game. And that is so true. Because when you take on capital and you change the financial structure of your business, you now have another cook in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
that other cook in the kitchen who's just giving you money, they want to have a say.
Mm-hmm.
And so it ought to be a badge of last resort. I loved what you had to say about every CEO is lonely at the top. One of my favorite people in the world is a guy named Buzz Williams, who's the basketball coach at Virginia Tech, and I have been working with him for 8 years. One of the things that he asked me to do was put together the 25 things. He didn't say 25. He said, "Tell me what you wish you knew when you were 42." This was back when I was 62. And so I wrote down a whole bunch of things, but one of the things that I wrote down was that leadership is lonely.
Yeah.
And it truly is lonely because you're out there sort of all on your own. The other thing that I loved what you had to say was that the CEO is great at sales, but the transition from that CEO's greatness at selling to actually building a sales organization is not an easy thing to do. And I also think that if you're going to be a great consulting company, you have to do exactly what you've done, which is 3 things. 1, build an assessment that gives you enough insight to develop an insight report that actually tells them what to do, and then have the guts to hold their hand while it's being done and they see the results. And if you do that, your client engagements are going to last years and years and years, and my guess is that's what's going to happen to your business. So thanks so much for being a guest
Absolutely.
on the Jerry Acuff Show. Good luck to you, and when I'm in Phoenix, hopefully you and I'll get a chance to meet in person.
I would love that. We'll talk more about Memphis.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. And before I go, let me close by saying what I always say when I close, and that is no matter what you do, whether it's youth pastor, whether it's deal with Felicity and Corey, and I'm going to forget the other name, Finn. Be incredible. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed today's show where we met yet another incredible person. As a thank you for listening, I want to extend a special offer. I want to give you 50% off of Jerry Acuff VT because I want to help you be incredible. Head over to jerryacuffvt.com and use the code JAVT50OFF at the checkout and accelerate your path to finding your greatness.
RNCN, the digital destination for premium talk radio.